Hi, I'm Jennifer Ackerman-Haywood from CraftSanity, and I'm here with the CraftSanity Kindred Hat Loom. And I'm going to show you how to make a headband and a mini cowl on this loom. So if this is your first video about this loom, this is an adjustable loom that we use to make hats size adult to infant, and also these headbands and mini cowls. So it's a very versatile loom. Okay, so before we get started with weaving, I want to just make a note here about yarn choices. These looms are designed to work really well with bulky yarn. You only need a single strand if you're working with a bulky chenille or any other bulky wool. You also, though, don't feel limited. If you don't have tons of bulky yarn around, you don't have to be limited. You can really burn through your stash by holding several strands together. The cowl that I'm wearing was made using 2 strands of the gray here, and this is like a bamboo blend, and 1 strand of a variegated, kind of like a ribbon kind of yarn here. I had both these things in my stash and decided, you know what, let's put those together and see what we can do. I usually hold 3 strands together if I'm using a worsted weight yarn. This is kind of a mix. And you can just experiment. You can test out a sample and see how it's looking and then get started with your weaving. But we're going to simplify things and just work with 1 strand today, and we'll end up with a headband that's going to be thick. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do here is come up to the top left of the loom and tie this on. You can keep it loose. Just undo the first wing nut, the top wing nut here, and then tighten it back on the yarn, and that will hold it in place. And the reason why I do this is it prevents me from needing to tie a knot that I can't untie later. Believe me, I've had a few problems in the past. So here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to just come straight down, go around this peg, and this is what the part of the process called warping the loom. And basically you're just setting up the loom to do some over-under weaving. So we're just going to wind this on, and it's pretty quick on this loom, which makes it really fun because you get to the finish line faster than you do with any of the other well, some of the hat projects, the infant hats, are pretty fast, but this is a nice, easy project to get you started. Okay, so since we're using a chunky yarn, I actually start and stop my projects 1 peg in. So I'm not going to use the 4 corner pegs. For the cowl that I showed you at the beginning of this video, I was using the thinner weight yarn, and I just decided to fill the entire loom, and I use these 4 corners. So since I'm using the bulky yarn, I'm going to go just wrap right around the 2nd peg in. Then I'm going to go to the corresponding 2nd peg in on the other side of the loom. And now we're going to begin our weaving process, and we're going to do this we put the yarn across here just to kind of give ourselves a little head start. This strand here, we're going to weave as a single strand. Everything else is going to be in groups of 2. Okay? So in order to get this doesn't look like weaving, does it? Well, that's going to change momentarily here. Since I went over this strand, I'm going to go, I want my yarn to go under this strand. Okay, this one's already underneath here, so I'm going to take this loop off. So every other loop you're going to take off and put over that yarn that you've pulled across your loom, like so. And I do this on all the CraftSanity looms because it kind of ensures success. You can check to see if you have mistakes. And if you're working on a larger, wider loom, this becomes more of a critical situation here. So what we're going to do is now take, this is a 12-inch ruler, and what I'm doing is I'm going to put it under the loops that I just put my yarn under. Okay, and what this does is this is a shed stick, and it creates that opening that you can weave through really fast. So since I don't need to have this, I'm going to be going pretty quickly, and I'm not going to be always going under these same loops. I'm going to just leave it like this. If you're working with a bigger project or a wider project, you can have your shed stick like this, and then every other pass you can put it down. I'm just going to leave it in this position. Okay, so now to begin weaving, I'm going to do the opposite of what I just did. So I'm going to go and pick up all the loops that we went over, and then this single strand on the end. and I'm going to put this yarn through. I'm going to reach all the way through and do the opposite of what I was doing. And I'll move a little bit out of the way here. Okay, so I'm going to keep going, doing the opposite. And what I like about this loom is when it's sized for the headbands, you can reach all the way across and it's pretty smooth. And it's easier when you're right by the ruler there, or whatever you're using to open your shed. It's easy to reach through the closer you are to it. And then when I'm doing the opposite, I usually work closer to the weaving. Okay, so now that I can't really fit anymore through here, I'm going to just take this stick out, remove that ruler, and weave these one at a time. You could use a crochet hook if you want. I find that weaving with my hands is faster, but do what you're comfortable with. Okay, and I'm going to leave these two corners alone. So we're done with that part of the weaving. So now what we're going to do is stretch this yarn down in about 6 inches or so past, 6 to 8 inches past. I'm going to grab a scissors here, trim that off. Now we're going to come in here with a crochet hook, and I'm going to follow with this single strand. Whatever the single strand does, I'm going to copy that exactly with this. And what I'm doing is I'm just finishing this off, and so I can have that second, have it be a double strand on both ends here. Alright, so now we're done with our weaving part of this, and now what we're going to do is get ready to make our headband. So in this case, we want to have our edges finished all around the sides, and so this part right here is over here, and this is the other side right along here. So what we're going to do, we can go back over here and loosen that wing nut and get that yarn back off of there. I'm just gonna loosen this back up so we're ready to remove this from the loom. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll start in the corner that doesn't have any kind of yarn tail here, and we're gonna remove these loops. So I'm taking the first loop off, taking the second loop off, and I'm gonna pull that second one through the first. I'm just going to move along the loom and continue to repeat that, where you grab the loop and pull it through the loop on your hook. Just go all the way down. Okay, now I'm taking this last loop, I'm going to pull it through the one on my hook, and then with this yarn tail, I like to anchor these, so what I do is I pull up a loop with that yarn tail, and then I go to the first loop on the top of the loom and pull it through that yarn tail loop and return the loop to the top of the loom. Okay, so one side of my headband, so one side of the headband is complete. Now we just have to repeat this process on the other side. Again, I'm starting from the corner that does not have a yarn tail. Okay, so now we're down to the end here, and what we're going to do is take this last loop, pull it through, and then I take the yarn tail, and once again I'm going to anchor that and pull up a loop as if I'm kind of like a crochet move here, and then I'm going to go into this top loop, pull through, and return a loop to that peg. Okay, so now we have our headband is pretty good. Now you could go all the way around and have a piece like this piece. If we started in one point and went all the way around, we would end up with a piece like this cowl that I have where the ends are not connected. But for a headband, it makes sense to just have it connected. And this yarn is has a little bit of give to it, so you can stretch it over your head, which is great. So what I'm going to do here, since I don't like to take things off and then have to stitch them together, like you could go all the way around, and then you can say, okay, I'm going to join the ends. You could whip stitch it together, crochet it together, however you want to do that. But I like to basically just finish things off without having to add extra yarn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stitch marker, getting ahead of myself. I'm so geeked about getting this off the loom that I'm just going here. Okay, so this is a stitch holder. If you're a knitter, you're familiar with how these work. This holds stitches that you're looking to just keep from unraveling when you're knitting. I'm going to use that to take these loops off and move them, because I want to move them to the other end so I can finish this as one piece. So now I have all my loops here. If I was gonna like take a break, I'd fasten this, but we're not taking a break, so we can just go right down here. And I'll turn this. So what I'm gonna do is just put the loops back on the loom right on top of this row of loops. So every peg now will have 2 loops on this end. Okay, and then you can give this a little tug down here to just get those to stay in place. Okay, so I'm going to ignore the yarn tails for right now, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to take that top loop, and then I'm going to pick up the bottom loop and put the bottom loop through the top loop. Okay, now I'm going to move to the next peg over. I'm going to take the top loop, put it through the loop on my hook, then come back here and get that bottom loop. Do the same thing. So you go top loop through, then the bottom loop through, then move to the next peg. Do that all the way across. Okay, so now we have just one loop hanging out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of go over under the next, I'm just going to go right under this loop and pull up a loop and pull it through. Okay, the reason why I did that is it just kind of makes it, I try to avoid having a big dip right here at the join, and then you can kind of tug this a little bit so it's flat, and I'm going to go into this end, and as you can see, when you lay this down, there's a little bit of a dip here, and that doesn't look that great. So what I do is it's not a big problem, I just go underneath the loop here, and this just seems kind of stretched out right here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go across and I'm going to just pull up a loop and pull it through. And then I still have one loop, and it's like, okay, we still have one loop. How do we get rid of that? We could keep doing this all day, right? Well, just pull your yarn tail through, just like that. What you're going to do now is we're going to weave in these yarn tails. So you want to get it, just pull it through a couple. You want to make sure that you don't pull super tight, because if you pull really tight, it pulls that in. So if you make that mistake, just back it out a little bit. And we're just going to... Now you don't want to go all the way to the... I don't usually go all the way to the edge here, because then it kind of comes out the side, so I kind of just work it in. Kind of go back the other direction a little bit so it doesn't totally unravel itself. Actually, we should be good. I think we're good. I tend to be a little overzealous sometimes with my weaving in of edges here. So you can just... And if you want to turn that right side out, you can. And then you have yourself a headband. This is one of the easiest projects on this loom, so it's pretty fast too. You can weave headbands in all different sizes just by moving this end piece, taking this off and moving it back. Your end pieces will hang out beyond this piece. That's totally fine. You can move this back and make headbands for little kids all the way up to adults, and keep your ears warm, keep your hair in place when you're out skiing, whatever you want to do.